Mark Meckler is with us. He is the interim CEO of Parler. There is a story out now that Parler, was taken off because all of the planning for January 6th happened on Parler. Well, as we find out, no, that actually isn't true. Most of the planning, I guess, happened on Facebook. But now there's a new twist to the story. And I'm going to let Mark tell you. Mark, welcome to the program. How are you?
I'm good. Good to be with you, Glenn. Thanks for having me this morning.
Thank you. So tell me about the FBI and Parler and what was happening.
I mean, this is important. Parler is a free speech platform, but we've always prohibited violent threats and incitement on the platform. And we can now say this publicly. We're limited in what we could say because we have this ongoing investigation by the House. But in the days and weeks that led up to January 6th, Parler actually made over 50 referrals of violent content to the FBI, and that included specific threats of violence that were being planned at the Capitol. So we've always been cooperative with the FBI in regard to these things, and the idea that we somehow weren't or that all this planning was taking place on Parler is just a fabrication.
Okay, so I want to make this clear. And I understand, we will do the same thing. We have reported violent content. If a subscriber's like, I'm going to kill somebody or blow somebody up, we feel it is our responsibility to report those kinds of things if we catch them. So we have done that. But people get very sensitive when you say, I'm going to report something to the FBI. What you had were specific violent threats against people or the Capitol that revolved around January 6th. Before January 6th, did the FBI call you and ask you for those, or did you call them and alert them?
No, we called them and alerted them. And this is just, like you said, with your website, this is exactly the same kind of thing. When we feel like a threat is specific and actionable and potentially dangerous, then we're always going to work with the FBI. We're always going to work with law enforcement to try to prevent, do everything we can as just good people to prevent violent acts. We saw specific threats of violence against Attorney General Barr, against Hillary Clinton and others. And of course, those things, we're always going to report those things. We are a free speech platform. People can say what they want to say as long as it comports with the First Amendment. But when it looks like people are actually planning or trying to incite actual violence or law breaking, then those are things we're going to report.
Correct. As a responsible company should at all times. Now, what I'm having a hard time with two things. One, how then this whole story was turned around on Parler and you lost your platform when you indeed were alerting the FBI in advance and working with the FBI, I'm sure, after January 6th, if they had any other questions or needed any other information, correct?
That's correct. And we continue to do so. If we get actionable threats or in any of these past threats, we turn over everything we can to help the FBI make sure that nobody's going to get hurt or that no illegal activity is going to happen. What happened shortly after January 6th, though, I'm going to point first at Sheryl Sandberg, the CEO of Facebook, who went on national television, who went in the media and pointed at Parler and said, this is the fault of Parler because they don't moderate their content. They don't have any kind of adequate oversight. This is simply untrue. This is just a fabrication. And I think it's because she knew what was going on in her own platform, and she understood that most of this activity took place on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And so she was striking first in order to defer the blame.
Yeah, and you can probably pretty safely say that because what she was talking about was all of the sophisticated algorithms and systems that Facebook has. It allows them to go through the billion posts that they receive, and I mean that literally, the billion posts they receive, and you don't have that kind of an algorithm. Is it all done by hand by you guys?
In the past, sometimes it has been. Today, we have artificial intelligence as a first layer of screening for this kind of stuff, but then everything has human intervention on the backside. And look, they knew what was going on. An independent Forbes analysis found that there were over 200 charging documents filed by the DOJ. 73 include references to Facebook, 24 to YouTube, and 20 to Instagram. And then that was followed up, by the way, by George Washington University. They have a program on extremism. 54% of charging documents refer to Facebook, 13% to Twitter, 13% to Instagram, only 5% to Parler. So Parler had almost no role in any of this.
So the next question that I have that I'm having a hard time getting my arms around, why wouldn't you have said that from day one? Wait a minute. We alerted the FBI.
Yeah, Glenn, I think this is a very hard thing that people don't understand. I know this as a lawyer. You've obviously had to be involved in a lot of this stuff. Sometimes when you want to speak, you have to keep your mouth shut because you need to make sure that you don't make any mistakes. When you have all the giant tech giants against you, when you have the government aligned against you, as we do with the House Oversight Committee, you can't afford to make a single mistake or they're going to hang you with that. And so
Correct.
We hired what I think are the best lawyers in the area, Vincent & Elkins. They're an international firm. That we have a group that specializes in House Oversight Committees or congressional inquiries. And they told us, you guys need to lay low. We have to do all the forensic analysis. We had to spend an incredible amount of money literally to sort through every single post that's ever made to make sure that when I come on a program like this, I don't make a single misstatement, because if I do that, they're not going to pay attention to anything else. They're just going to hang us with the misstatement. So we had to sit back while we're being attacked. It's unfortunate, but that's part of the reality when you get involved in legal stuff like this.
So why are you coming out with it now?
But we've done the full analysis. We've had the entire forensic analysis done. The lawyers have reviewed everything. I can say with absolute confidence that the things I'm saying are true. They're unequivocally true. There is no contradictory evidence. We know that we had very minimal people who were posting on our platform had very minimal involvement in this stuff. There's been law enforcement review, Forbes, George Washington University, our internal review. We've answered the House Oversight Committee's letter, their request to us with our letter. That's now public record. So now that this is all public record and we've responded to the House Oversight Committee, we're able to go public.
I think you would have a pretty good case against Facebook in particular, and a pretty buttoned-up case, really, for America to see what was really going on. But will anyone cover this? I know that Newsweek, covered it a bit, but they mainly talked about you being with the Convention of States.
Yeah, I mean, that tends to happen. They want to obfuscate. But to be fair, Glenn, I have to say, and I was surprised by this, we did see quite a bit of media coverage, and it was not too biased or unfair in regard to our House Oversight response. So I was pleasantly surprised by the amount of coverage that was out there. Whether they'll continue to cover it is our best guess, right? Here's another important fact.
Honestly, the damage is already done. You never there's no place to go back and get your reputation back.
That is correct.
You were doing something that, quite honestly, and I know this because we have wrestled with it, where is the line where we have to report something because it's the right thing to do, and how are we to judge? And if we report something and then we miss something else, are we going to get nailed for not reporting that? And, we're a freedom of speech platform. We believe in the freedom of speech. I don't want to curtail anybody's speech. But when we saw threats against President Trump, we saw threats against President Obama. And if we see threats against Biden, we will report those because it's all of our president. It's not one party's president. He is the president of the United States, and that's not a joking matter. So I know that you went through. This is a really dangerous double-edged sword for people who believe, like you do and I do, of freedom of speech.
It is, and unfortunately, it's become both political and business at this point. And I think one of the reasons you saw the attack by big tech is that Parler was growing so exponentially. In November, it was the number one downloaded app on Apple and Google. That's more than Zoom or TikTok or YouTube. 10th most downloaded app for 2020. It rose to number one again after Twitter banned President Trump. So they saw a threat to their business model. And then when you see Congress get involved, when you see the House Oversight Committee get involved, it's political. The Democrats on that committee, by the way, received over $83,000 from Parler competitors, Facebook and Twitter. Republicans on that committee received $1,900. So it kind of tells you where the House Oversight Committee is coming from.